Hello, everyone. I'm Russ Finney, and I'm a lecturer at the University of Texas in Austin. And over the last few months, I've been engaging with several different task forces, as well as speaking with executives and having conversations with the companies about what they're planning to do as these restrictions around COVID-19 begin to ease. And what do the best practices look like? What does a roadmap look like during this post-pandemic phase that we're getting ready to go through? So let me talk for a few minutes about post-pandemic and kind of how our team's been approaching the thinking process around this roadmap. For the most part, our team believes there really is no new normal. We just believe that there is only today's normal. We're going to pass through a series of milestones, and each one is going to have its own characteristics as we continue to move through this ongoing stream of normal that we're in right now. So if we think about the pandemic itself, it's very comparable to what we experienced a little over 100 years ago with the Spanish flu. And ironically, it was 1918 when this occurred, literally at the turn of the century. And here we are again, 100 years later, going through a very similar experience. What do we see here in this photograph? We see people working with personal protective equipment. They're preparing masks, and a very familiar feeling to what's going on now. So you've got the gowns, you've got the masks, you've got all the protection going on. So back in 1918, the hospitals were somewhat overrun with the pandemic, and so these triage centers were set up. And some were quite large. And sure enough, something very similar was set up in New York City, strikingly similar to what we saw with the 1918 pandemic. Also, another similarity is the whole law enforcement and wearing the protective face masks outside. And we're seeing the same thing play itself out again. There was also a huge emphasis on people wearing their face masks in public. And if you go back and look at the different research around the time period, you'll find that there was a set amount of tolerance for how long people were willing to wear these masks. And it was a number of months before people started pushing it against the idea of wearing masks. So let's take a look at the roadmap and what we've been learning, talking to companies and talking to various experts in different task force situations that we've been in. So this is what the roadmap looks like right now. We've only taken it out through 3 milestones. Of course, there's going to be many more milestones beyond this. But the first course of business for most companies was to get stabilized. And looking down through the roadmap itself, there's really this first gate, which is this sudden transformation that we've been going through. And then the second gate is really thinking about the new policies that are formulating even today as you're watching this video. And then thinking about the new business strategies that are going to emerge out of this. So we'll go through all 3 of these gates in detail. So let's take a look at the first gate in the series. So we had the initial shock of orders to shelter in place, and the next thing you know, we're all at home. For me, it happened over spring break, and I was in the classroom lecturing for half the semester, and then we extended our spring break at University of Texas to 2 weeks, and we brought up all of our tools and teaching methods into an online format, and then I pretty much taught my classes for the remainder of the semester through tools like Zoom. So we're still there. We're still working in kind of the survival mode. And let's take a little closer look at what this sudden transformation phase of things looks like. Cities and states and national agencies went into this remote work phase. But what do we need to do now? It's really about fine-tuning. So we'll talk more about that in the second video. And all of a sudden we had companies that did digital transformation that normally would take months. They did it in a matter of weeks. There's also a big need to think about security and perimeter monitoring. That's a deep subject. We'll talk about that. Innovative thinking has been going on around how do we still make money in this situation that we're in. There's also an imperative out there to review e-commerce opportunities, and there's still a lot of need to do status communications with our employees, our customers, our stakeholders. All this is important. Let's talk about the technology for a minute. We've got a office worker or maybe an operator in front of one of these very old primitive telecommunication devices. I don't think people could have worked from home back in 1918. They didn't have the luxury of the technology that we have today. If you look at our situation, it's fairly incredible. So we've got the modern communications technology with our in-home Wi-Fi equipment and connectivity back out through the internet. The video conferencing companies have been coming on stream. Who knew that we would have to turn this stuff on in such a huge scale, almost a stampede? Marry that up with what's coming, the new 5G platforms, and then couple that with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we've got a whole new set of capabilities and a lot of thinking ahead. So let's talk about the second gate here, the second milepost. A lot of companies that may have used work from home scenarios previously probably have these policies, but a lot of companies don't. Also, video conferencing and formality expectations of this, especially if it goes till the end of the year. How formal do we want to be? How formal do we expect our employees to be? How formal do we expect students to be? There's big thinking ahead around insurance, risk, also liabilities, and we're already seeing waivers appearing at restaurants and certain businesses. If you're going to engage in commerce there, you've got to sign a waiver. Office and facility guidelines are going to be important. It doesn't matter whether it's a administrative operation, it could be a service in and out type thing, it could be a manufacturing floor. Each one is going to have different guidelines and expectations. There may be technologies employed, and we'll talk about that. Supply chain policies. There's going to be huge impact, not only from self-reflection, but there's probably going to be outside forces, both political and geopolitical, that are going to influence our supply chains. Employee recruiting, employee absence policies, and retention policies, especially if they're working from home. If you're working from your house and you're sitting in front of your computer screen and you're working for your employer, what kind of perks are there for you? Not many. And what's to stop me from pointing my video conferencing capability over to the competitor and taking a job over there? It's still the same situation. I'm still sitting at my desk. I'm still at my home. There'll be a little bit of unexpected, unanticipated consequences here. The barbers who've moved their chairs outside, they're wearing their masks, and they're giving haircuts. And what's one of the first things that all of us wanted to do when these restrictions lifted? We wanted to get out and get our hair taken care of. And I recently got my hair cut, and it kind of looks like this. So there's restrictions, and we've got masks on, and this probably is going to go on for a while. Another area that was similar back in the turn of the century in the last pandemic was the commerce. And I think we'll probably be in this mode for quite a while, maybe all the way through the end of the year. And culturally in Asia, if you have a cold and you're not wearing a mask to work, it's considered impolite because you're spreading. And we may pick up some of this culture ourselves. I know for the next 12 months, anybody that's coughing or sneezing, I wouldn't want to be around them unless they had a mask on. Thinking about the office environment itself is probably going to be a very challenging thing. So what is this going to look like for us? More than likely, we're going to be wearing masks at work. We're going to be thinking about cubicles versus these open environments. We're going to be thinking about distancing. We're going to be thinking about meetings. We're going to be thinking about how many employees are in the building at any one time, and sign-in systems, all kinds of different nuances of how the work is going to be. And here's some of the preliminary ideas for new strategy. Companies are going to be rethinking their existing business models. We had to do some sudden transformation. So what does that mean? Do we continue marketing as we have? Or do we take on kind of a new angle on our branding and marketing? There's a lot of new business models emerging right now. Seeing it in existing companies. We're seeing it in brick and mortars. It's amazing how innovative and creative companies have been during this time period in order to keep their employees engaged and to keep some money flowing. Some of those models are going to live on. It's going to be important to think about IT technologies in the future. Also, there's going to be important sorting that's going to go on what do we keep temporary and what are we going to keep permanent. Which of these things are going to live on and which of them are we going to shut down? All of this has to be aligned with the governmental phasing. We've seen it at a national level and we're seeing it at a state level as well. Looking at our key suppliers and our partners, and are they the right ones? How did they fare during this time period? And then reevaluating our geographic locations and our physical locations. What did we learn during the pandemic? Is there things that we're going to need to adjust? I mean, if there was ever an opportunity to look at the way that we positioned ourselves, this is it. So there's some questions that probably need answering and need to be answered sooner than later. One is your business enabled with smart technology? Were you using, for example, your employee smartphones? Were you using your customers' smartphones and your suppliers? Also, your commerce strategy, and I have talked to business after business after business about moving online, and a lot of them did it in a big bang over the last few months. It's incredible. Also, do you have security deployed? Are we keeping our perimeters safe? And so we need to talk about that. And then the HR policies, and are they ready for the future situation? There's a lot to think about there. I will go through a list of what those policies look like. And again, if you are interested in downloading any of this, it's going to be at techweekly.com/viewpoints. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to the future videos and conversations with all of you. Bye-bye.